What's going on, guys? Welcome to the season 4 finale and the last episode for a while of Talkin Hawkins, our Stranger Things in review. My name is Kyler, your host. Welcome to Project Potter, guys. If you haven't been here before, go check out the other content on the channel and, of course, the other episodes here. But, guys, it all leads to this big reveal here. Vecna created the Mind Flayer, which is really cool. We'll get to that in a bit. What we do is go through some of my favorite scenes for the episode, a Hawkins hero, which is my favorite character, a mouth breather, which is my least favorite character, a score out of 10. And that's pretty much it. The season 4 finale, the 2.5-hour finale. I've mentioned this whole season, guys, that they have gone with quantity over quality for the most part. And it doesn't mean that there haven't been highs and lows, but there has been just so much content. I don't know why they decided to have such a long runtime, because I was checking my watch for this one. I was like looking at the clock and I'm like, dude, there's still 40 minutes left. There's still an hour left. I'm like, why is this show still going? And it felt like there were moments of not dead air, but there were just moments that like went on a little too long. And I was like, I don't think that we needed this much time. But I want to talk about the positives here, guys. The big twist with Vecna creating the Mind Flayer was really cool. If you guys remember, Dustin said that the Mind Flayer, or Vecna was the Mind Flayer's 5-star general. It's actually the other way around, where Vecna created the Mind Flayer. He reveals to Elle, and like as he's about to kill Max, which is a crazy scene, but he's like, oh, by the way, you created me like this. He's like, you made me like this, because Elle's trying to tell him that like Papa's dead, but Papa was a monster, and Vecna's like, nah, dude, you are the monster. You're the one who made me. And I was like, oh, and I think that's tough for Elle to hear. But Vecna is like, look, I was stumbling upon this wasteland, and he's like, I finally found what I needed. And then he finds that like dust, those particles that are in there, we saw in the lab for the prison. And it shows that he formed it into the Mind Flayer, which looks like a spider, which now makes complete sense because Vecna has been kind of the master of puppets, controlling everything in the Upside Down, and he's the one who's been sending the attacks. He's obsessed with spiders, as we knew, guys, in the Black Widow, so it makes sense that he made it into a spider. And he says, like, I could finally become the predator I was meant to be. And I was like, oh my God, that's a really awesome line. Like, again, Team Vecna, guys. He's trying to take over the world, and he talks about the 4 rifts, and I think I forget if it was Papa who explained it. Someone said like it's like a dam where he's like building cracks, and he's like, if enough cracks get in there, it bursts. And it's when I think it was last episode or the episode before, when Papa snaps the pencil. It's revealed that he needed Elle's powers too, and he's been drawing Elle out, and he knows that like she needs to create these rifts too, I think, in a way. But I want to say, guys, the whole scene with Max, we knew it was going to go down. I didn't know if they were going to kill Max or not, but when she gets up in the air, I'm like, all right, well, Elle's probably going to come in last minute and save her. But then her arm snaps, and I'm like, oh. And then I'm like, okay, well, maybe like she's going to have a broken arm and then she'll be fine. And then her leg snaps, and I'm like, are they going to kill Max? And then it's even worse because she gets 75% of the way there. And then there's the heartbreaking scene, which I thought was so well acted by Lucas and Max. And they finally like defeat Vecna, and Max falls. And she says to Lucas, she's like crying, and she's, oh my God, Sadie Sink is so good in this scene. So good all season, but like she is like, I'm scared. And she says, I can't feel or see anything. And I'm like, oh my God, that's so terrifying, dude. And Lucas reveals later that she died for a minute. Her heart stopped for over a minute. And then she came back, and she's in the hospital, and we don't know how she's doing. And Lucas is reading to her, but Lucas is breaking down in that scene where he's holding her. And like, it was super emotional, dude. I was crying like a lot. The Eddie death, I will talk about Eddie in a second. That didn't hit me as hard, although Eddie was great. But when Max, it was because Max, I thought they were just going to keep her alive, and she's going to be like really messed up, and that's going to be way more sad. Which they weren't clear. They kept her alive, so they're obviously going to bring her back. This sounds bad, but I hope she doesn't make a full recovery, because I want there to be stakes. I want there to be meaning behind these scenes. Kind of reminds me of the MCU. The one knock on the MCU is like they'll just bring people back, and it's like, well, dude, when you bring people back or you reverse things, it takes away from the moment, the big moment, right? I thought Elle was going to do some kind of rewind powers when, they fight Vecna, and Vecna's like, oh, you think you've won, but you've lost, and Elle is like, no, actually, you've lost. And that's when Nancy and Steve and Robin go and they throw the Molotov cocktails at Vecna, and they threw the fire at him. And then like I was like, oh, okay, interesting. But then he like stands up and he's on fire, and it's like very Michael Myers-esque. And we had a Michael Myers mask. I think last episode, guys. So shout out to the Duffer Brothers for that little ode to Michael Myers. And Vecna is very much like Michael Myers, like unkillable at this point. And he even falls at the end. He falls out of the house. I think is in the first Halloween when Michael Myers falls by like the laundry or whatever, and then he's just gone. Like the body's gone. And I was like, as soon as they like saw Vecna fall and then they didn't see the body, I was like, he's not dead, dude. I would have liked that they kept that secret a little bit longer. But then at the end, guys, we just get Will, who's just like, oh no, he's definitely alive. Mike is like, well, at least Vecna's dead. And then Will's like, oh, he's not. I know what he's doing right now. He's chilling. He's watching like NFL Red Zone right now, dude. He's just hanging out. He's like, he's still alive. And I was like, oh, I wish he didn't like reveal that, dude. We get the whole thing with Joyce and Hopper, and they finally get out, and Yuri comes over, and they fight the Demogorgons, and of course it's like it's cool, and they play Run Up That Hill again, which I'm like was really really cool the first time. They overused it a little bit too much. Still a great song, but I was like, oh, I'm not feeling it as much this time. I wish they didn't use it the second time that Vecna like evaporated or whatever. And you knew Vecna wasn't dead, but I didn't know if they're gonna reveal like something bigger because Max died. The fourth like rift came apart, and then there's that earthquake through Hawkins, which is crazy. And you're like, oh my god, dude, like that's crazy that happened. But then they said the death toll was like 22 people, and they said a bunch of people were hurt. But I was like, 22 people for a huge earthquake that like ripped through. It ripped four different ways, like through everything. And I was like, come up with a higher number. You know what I mean? And I know Hawkins is a small town, so that's probably like 80% of the population. But when they were like the death toll is 22, I was like, that's still obviously super sad. But I'm like, say like hundreds. It felt less impactful when I heard that number. I was like, oh, okay, well, it's, but again, maybe there's 300 people in the town, so maybe that's a third of the town or something, you know what I mean? But either way, it's still sad. I don't want to seem like I'm Vecna, you know what I mean? Like I'm a heartless monster. Still really sad, really crazy. I love how they drive back in and everyone's leaving Hawkins, but like everything's sad and they have the missing people. And we get the great scene with Dustin and Eddie's uncle, and he's like, where's my nephew? And he's like, hey man, I was with him. And Dustin has a really great scene where he's like, I wish I knew him better, but he hands him the locket. What was weird about that scene is that the uncle did not ask like where the body is, and also what did Dustin do with the body. He also didn't explain that like they were in the Upside Down. So it's weird that like not all of Hawkins knows about the Upside Down still, because they've had all these events and stuff, and they're like, oh, it must be a serial killer, it must be this. And it's like, dude, the earth was literally ripping apart like the gate. They're calling like the gateway to hell and it's stuff. And it's like, you think at this point this isn't the first incident that Hawkins has had, like, and some people are still living there. I like I think it's Mike's parents, the Wheelers. I love how the dad's just like, oh, okay, it's a gateway to hell. He's like, what else is next? He's like, that dude just wants to sit in his recliner and just chill in Hawkins. He doesn't care what happens around him. So respect to Mike's Mr. Wheeler. We had some emotional moments. Again, this was very much like the rest of the season, but it was just so long, dude. And Eddie's sacrifice obviously was great. Shout out to the dude who played Eddie Munson. Eddie was great from the first episode, and he was like a staple. And we figured someone's got to go, and I thought they were going to get Eddie and Max to go, but it seems like they valued Sadie a little bit more, maybe because she's been with the crew a little bit better, a little bit longer, I should say. But Eddie had to go. He had his heroic sacrifice. He bought the time needed. So he was great. But yeah, I mean, Hopper, I don't know where they got a sword, but like I also thought they've never tried swords against Demogorgons. So Hopper like cutting off the head was really cool. But like then what's his name? Murray uses the flamethrower, and it's like, okay, well, we've seen that before. So it's like, okay, really cool. But like I think season 2, they literally go in like the hive and stuff, and they're like burning everything. So it's interesting to see like that again, but it's like, again, it's retreading. So the emotional moments really are the ones that hit me. So yeah, the Max scene in particular was crazy. And I don't want to wish anything on Max, but her speech where she says like, I wish that something terrible would happen to me like it did to Billy, because she's like, I couldn't. Max reveals in this episode that like when Billy died, she's like, I didn't stand in my place because I was scared to go save him. I wasn't sure if he was worth saving. And I'm like, wow, that's so powerful and so dark. And poor Max has just been going through a lot. And she's basically saying that she's been like suicidal and she wants something to happen. and so she's almost like accepting death, right? But then when she gets her eyes were bleeding. I don't know if her eyes. It's going to be interesting. I hope she doesn't make a full recovery, because then it kind of takes away from the moment. It would be really really sad if Max is like blind and paralyzed, and it's like, oh man, dude, now they have to like be a living reminder of what's going on. But it's interesting that they didn't that they it's interesting what they did, and I'm interested to see what they do next season. But yeah, guys, it was I think a good finale, just really long, and I really felt like they were really dragging things out, and I was like, all right, dude, let's like come on now. But yeah, the emotional highs were pretty good, but those are my thoughts on kind of this very bloated finale. Hey guys, my Hawkins hero for this one, it's got to be Eddie, dude. Eddie went out like a G. He brought them the time that they needed. He was a great character. He will be missed for sure. I hope they give him, I'm surprised they didn't give him some sort of like funeral or whatever, but Dustin has that great line where he's telling his uncle, like, Eddie went out like a hero. He did everything he could to save this town, for a town that hated him. Like, he's like, the whole town hated him, and he still like, sacrificed himself to save it. And it's like, oh, wow, what a line, dude. And Eddie was just great, from start to finish. Like, I love how they introduce him in the first episode, and they're like, oh, is this guy going to be like an antagonist? But then like he gets along with everyone, and I love his interactions with Dustin and Steve, and we get that nice moment. I think it was at the beginning of this finale where he's like, or it might have been in part one, where he goes over to Dustin and he's like trying to tackle him and stuff in the field. And right before he dies, he tells Dustin he loves him. And I really like it because Dustin and him didn't mesh as well as Steve and Dustin did. But I like that they didn't just copy and paste that relationship. There were glimpses of like Dustin and Eddie really getting to know each other. But I love Dustin's line of being like, I wish I got to know him better, because I would have like everyone would have loved him. And it's the classic tragedy of like this character that's labeled like a freak that is actually a really nice dude, and it's like people will never know what he did to help save them. So yeah, Eddie was awesome, and he will be missed. He was absolute amazing character on this season. Okay, guys, my mouth breather for this one last time, Jason. Jason comes in, and it's like, again, it's so weird because he felt so out of place the whole time. He was just on this revenge quest, and he was like, it's satanic and it's a ritual and blah blah blah. And even when he saw Bradley die, he still was like, oh, it's Eddie. Eddie was doing, sacrificing everyone. And when he shows up and Lucas is telling him like, dude, we cannot wake Max early or we're all gonna die. And he's like, no, you're gonna wake her up right now. And Lucas is like, bro, did you just listen to what I just said? Max is clearly in a trance here. What do you think is going on? Don't you think Lucas knows more than you? Like, so Jason was just like, I don't know, man. He was just kind of like a nuisance all season. And again, no discredit to the actor. He played a really good job of me being like, dude, stop. Like, I hate your character. But yeah, he was just kind of in the way, and I think this season could have been better without him. But he does get the final mouth breather of season 4. Okay, guys, that brings us to the score for this one. I'm gonna give it an 8-8. This is I've been messing with the score a little bit in my head, but I don't think it's like the greatest thing ever. But those moments, season 4 is tricky for me, right? Because I think a lot of it is forgettable. Like I cannot believe that Hopper was at the prison, in and out of the prison with Joyce and Murray the whole season. Like, I really thought it was gonna be 1 or 2 episodes of Hopper, and then he's back in Hawkins. And the fact that they were in there for 9 episodes and so many hours of screen time. And what did we really find out about the prison? Is that, okay, they're trying to create demigorgons, and that's cool. Didn't need 9 episodes to do that. You know what I mean? And so it just taking Hopper out of the action for most of it is weird. And he gets that moment at the end where he goes back to Elle, and Elle was like, I kept the door open 3 inches because I never stopped believing. That was really sweet. But Hopper, I don't know. It was a nice moment, but it was weird because he just kind of shows up at the end, and it's like, I wish you shown up. It would have been really, really cool if like Elle was fighting Vecna, and then like she gave up or whatever, and then Hopper showed up, and then like that's what gave her the strength. Instead, it was just like Mike being like, Elle, I love you. You gotta fight. You gotta fight. And it's like, okay, it's so generic. And I like Mike and Elle's relationship, but it's like it was very like generic. And I'm like, oh, I wish Hopper, if it was the first time she saw Hopper, because she didn't know Hopper was alive at all, right? If that was the first time she saw Hopper and that's what got her over the hump to take down Vecna, that would be awesome. The Max stuff all season I think was great. Probably the best part of the season, honestly. When I look back at season 4, I go, it was a lot of screen time, a lot of runtime to basically find out that Vecna created the Mind Flayer and he's kind of the master of puppets. It's awesome that they play master of puppets, let me say. And Eddie, when Eddie rocks out and then Dustin and him are jumping up and down, they're like, that's the most metal thing ever. That was awesome. So I don't want to forget that. But okay, we find out that Vecna created the Mind Flayer and he's kind of controlling everything upside down. That's really cool. We find out that he's still alive. That's really cool. And we find out that the Russians are kind of creating demogorgons or opening gates, but we already kind of knew that going into the season, so that's not a huge surprise. Number 1 is Vecna, and we find out more about El's past, but this season feels like a whole lot of runtime to build up to like a war that's coming next season, and it looks like things are going to go crazy, and season 5 has already been confirmed for the last season. We'll probably get that like 2024, I'd say at the earliest. But I don't know, like, Vecna's going to be the bad guy again. I wish Vecna was revealed to be like a pawn or something, and then a bigger bad guy was revealed at the end. Like, like he said, like, oh, I'm just a soldier or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, because now it's like, are we going to see Vecna again? Is he going to be more powerful? We already know his powers. He was really great this season, but like, I just don't know if we're going to get like an end game level like Thanos style villain, or are we going to get like just more Vecna? You know what I mean? So it'll be interesting to see what kind of tricks they have up their sleeve. I'm sure the final season will be nuts. I hope that they focus more on a tight knit story and like really, really cool story beats instead of just being like, we're going to make the longest season ever. Like, I feel like that's what they did this season. And the story beats, it didn't really click with me as much outside of like the whole, everything that's going on with Max and her time with Billy. It was kind of weird, honestly, that Billy showed up again in Max's thoughts, like when he's like in the sauna room, because the whole group was there and this was just Max. But yeah, guys, I don't even know. I feel like I almost overscored this finale, but it does get me excited for next season. But I just feel like the runtime was way too long for the things. I feel like we could have gotten all of our reveals in the normal 45 to an hour episodes instead of like hour and a half, 2.5 hours. And I was like, oh my God, dude. I was like, I there's questions I have about the Upside Down, like why is it frozen? What happens there? But I hope we get all those questions answered in season 5. But yeah, I'd say I'd say an above average finale, but it didn't leave me like being like, wow, you know what I mean? So I guess that's where we'll leave it. All right, guys. So that's it for season 4 of Talkin' Hawkins. So that's going to be it for me, guys. We will be back, or I will be back, I should say. I always say we, even though it's just me doing these reviews. I will be back day 1, season 5 dropping for Stranger Things. So Talkin' Hawkins will return for the final season, probably in a couple of years, whenever that may be. Appreciate you guys on this journey with me. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. I know these went up after season 4 went out, but I was a little late to the party, guys. I'll be there day 1, season 5. I mark my words. So appreciate you guys. Like, comment, subscribe. And until next time, guys.